Vegas on the screen, feeling the flow, so pristine. Boom, as the beats align. Electric dreams, they intertwine.
To the huddle where the action is bright, where every play and every move feels right. We got the stats, the stories untold, touchdowns to three-pointers where the legends unfold. Game day, tune in, feel the beat, feel this riddle. From course to fields, every moment to chill. It's a game day huddle, your sports hang out, bringing you the scores, then make you shout.
All right, welcome on in, everybody. Episode 2 now off and running. It's the Game Day Huddle. Brett Lawson here, Steve Johnson on my left, Jimmy Guarino on my right. And fellas, we got the first one out of the way. Now we can relax, we can breathe, we can have some fun, and good timing too, because there's a lot to talk about today and a variety of sports, obviously heavy on the football front. But we got a jam-packed episode.
First off, guys, real quick, happy belated Thanksgiving.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right? Happy. I hope everyone enjoyed
Good
their holiday.
weekend.
You got nothing but nonstop sports for, 5 straight days. So I hope everybody enjoyed their sports
definitely,
feast.
It's definitely a lot of football watching and my girlfriend was probably one of them was like, oh my God, you watch this much football?
Wait, hold on.
The realization.
His girlfriend is saying, not one of his girlfriends. His girlfriend is saying, I just tried to keep you out of trouble.
I only have one. That is true,
You
Steve.
did talk about this moderating thing, and this is
right?
exactly why we need it.
Yeah,
Fact checker.
Yes,
for
exactly.
sure.
Clarification. No, but absolutely, guys. And I'm with you because in recent years, we talked about this a little last week. You know, the NFL's always had their thumb on Thanksgiving, but what they're doing with the Christmas slate now. And again, now that we've had 3 Christmas games or Thanksgiving games for a while, but to have college action on the Friday before, college action on the Saturday after, pretty much setting all the conference championships in stone. Then again, NFL Week 13 only continues on Sunday and finalizes tonight. So you're spot on, Steve. Really 5 days of straight football action.
And you had all that NBA action, too.
Yeah.
That's the other thing is you had NBA. And, real quick, we won't talk too much today about it, but Anthony Edwards, like Ant-Man is now, and now the NBA is making him a face. You're starting to see him in Sprite commercials. You're starting to see, and I think that's really exciting because that's a small market team getting a superstar.
Well, you definitely saw that with the Olympics. He came out of his shell, and he took over that team, and he was basically the guy on that Olympic team that everybody was looking to get the buckets, and Anthony Edwards is probably the next GOAT for the NBA.
And that's what's interesting because, like, we've tried really, really hard to kind of establish just that, whether it's an all-time great or just a generational great. And, there's been different people that we've kind of threw that title to. We thought John Morant may be generational, but obviously he can't keep his, nose clean off the court. Giannis Antetokounmpo has been stellar as a two-way player, but again, maybe that team success is taking a back seat now. Ant Edwards is the right player. It seems like he's on the right team at the right time. All things kind of coalescing together. So that's a good point. Good observation on the NBA front. And also some stuff to talk on the Major League Baseball front, too. Obviously, we're neck deep at this point in the offseason. I know the World Series is only, for me and Jimmy are still heartbroken about it. But the World Series is still close in the rearview mirror, and there's already major shakeup and obviously pending stories to come. So we'll hit on that as well. But, fellas, we got to start with the NFL, and there are so many places we can start. We all kind of collectively agree to start here in the group chat last night as the Bills get it done in dramatic fashion at home, whooping the Niners 35-10, and whooping is the appropriate word because that's all this was. At this point, the Niners seem like they're at an absolute free fall. You want to say they're done. You want to say they're cooked, stick a fork in them. We'll get to that. But, Steve, you mentioned it. It's kind of hard at this point in time not to start with Josh Allen, who, with this performance last night, is now the front runner in the MVP race at minus 150.
Look, this guy last night just set – it's crazy to think that there's NFL passing records or quarterback records to be broken in single games still, right? I understand yardage and stuff like that, but he is the first player ever to rush for a TD, throw a TD, and receive a TD. And I know we have that clip to look at. That particular play is, I mean, it's crazy. And Amari Cooper having the wherewithal to be like, I'm in a game. Look, you could not get the 49ers to hold on to the ball. And here are the Bills flipping it around in the snow. It looked like they were playing in the backyard.
They were playing in the backyard on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
That's what
They were.
doing.
Yeah.
That's exactly how they played
The Turkey
that game.
Bowl.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was. And it was impressive to watch. For
Yeah,
sure.
it was absolutely unbelievable. And I know we got that clip, and if we get a chance to get to it, we will. But, what's really cool is when you think about what Josh Allen has done is, look, dude's at Wyoming, goes in the second round. There's a lot of speculation on whether he's going to be accurate enough. You have all this. Mahomes booms. So everybody talks about Mahomes.
Right.
Then we get all these matchups, and he's been on the shorter side in the playoffs and during the regular season. They've been on the right side. Is this the year they get over the hump? I mean, that team is really good. And then when they can add someone to their roster that essentially is their best defensive player,
Right.
comes in and is able to play. And I would, as much as we want to talk about Mahomes, I think it's important too that we definitely want to mention the fact the 49ers are as close to a dumpster fire as you're going to get now.
Absolutely. That's
That
the
team-
only way to describe them now.
That team is all over the place. McCaffrey's hurt again. It's believed that he's out for the season.
But you saw the dumpster starting in the offseason with the 49ers, with the Deebo Samuel stuff, all the locker room talk. Everybody was talking about this team is literally going in the wrong direction.
Brandon Ayuk holding out.
Brandon Ayuk
Yep.
holding out.
Yep.
Like nonstop, there's been issues and issues and issues with this team. Now it's coming into light that they're a pretender. They're not contenders at all.
And they've now dropped 3 straight. Obviously, the heartbreaker in Seattle, but the last 2 have really just been
They're
ass
last
whoopings.
in the
That's
division.
easy. Yeah.
Let's talk. They're last in the division. There's nobody starting the year that would have thought at any point during this season the 49ers would be last in the division, and they are.
So let me ask you guys this. I'm curious to hear your feedback on both. As tremendous as last night was for Buffalo, and again, this is not necessarily Josh Allen's best year statistically speaking from like a fantasy football perspective, but it's hands down his best year as far as efficiency. He is playing the cleanest, sharpest football he's ever played. There's a balanced approach under Joe Brady. Obviously, James Cook, that first year, you weren't quite sure how he would pan out. Past 2 years is really coming into the swing of things, and Amari Cooper, still as good of a sure hands guy as you could ask
You got
for.
the 2 tight ends.
Right,
Even though
absolutely.
Kincaid's been hurt, you got 2 tight ends there that
and
are,
Knox's experience. So there you go. And it's the offensive line is good. It's on a year where we thought they were going to have to rebuild or at least reload. Here they are looking maybe the best they've ever looked. The defense is playing well, and they've clinched now, the 5th year in a row with the AFC East. It's December 2nd, and they are now in the playoffs. Like, that's absolutely insane.
Yeah.
And yet through it all, here's my ultimate question. Is last night, as we sit here Monday morning, more about where the 49ers are than where the Bills are, do you think?
A little bit of both.
Uh-huh.
The Bills are the team to beat in the AFC, I think. If you look back, the Ravens played well yesterday. It was a decent game for the Ravens. However, the Chiefs are pretenders. If you look at their schedule, look at what they've done. They're not blowing anybody out. They're barely scoring. Their offense, they're averaging, I think, less than 22 points a game. So the Chiefs aren't there. I think the Bills are the team to beat. They showed that last night. It's more so they're the best team in football in the AFC. I'm not going to crown them over the Lions at this point, however, because we saw what they did on.
Yeah.
And they play next week, too.
Yes.
Yeah, which is going to be an awesome regular season matchup, kind of like how Baltimore and Philadelphia, maybe that possible Super Bowl rematch. No, or Super Bowl preview, I should say. No, I'm totally with you because I think while it's easy looking forward to kind of what you said, hang your hat on the Bills and their playoff prospects, it's also kind of a reflection, Steve, of where the Niners are right now. And you said they're a dumpster fire. We were kind of mincing words, not saying everyone, but a lot of people were mincing words the past few weeks because it's just hard to accept that this roster can be that bad. But this roster is not the roster we saw in the Super Bowl. The injuries are mounting up to where it's almost impossible to overcome. Yeah. I mean, a few injuries is one thing. Ayuk out, McCaffrey out, Bosa out, Trent Williams out. Well,
they've had most of their defensive line has had, some type of stint on there. I know that they started the game yesterday with backups on the left side of the offensive line. Mm-hmm. So that team, look, they're in trouble. There's grumbling. Is coach out? Is he in? No, he's staying. He's not going anywhere. At this point, you shut Chris McCaffrey down for the year. You're done with your season. Get some guys some reps that need some reps and start looking into the draft. Because at this point, the way that they're looking and the way they're going, they're going to be drafting in the top 6 positions. Yeah. So, hey, take advantage of that. You just you re-signed your wide receiver. You obviously have your quarterback under contract. You've got a running back under contract. You've got a great tight end that's under contract. So at this point, I think you could go out. They could go all in offensive, defensive line in this draft and probably be a much better team the following year.
I want to ask you guys about, because Jimmy, you mentioned Mahomes, and we opened talking about Josh Allen in Buffalo. I tweeted last night, look, if you take away, this is just the gist of it, but if you take away the reputation, the whole aura, right, the legacy, everything surrounding the career success away, and took that away with no context and just watched the games, watch this season, watch particularly this weekend, there is no way you are thinking Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback of his generation. If you're watching Joe Burrow sling it and you're watching Josh Allen do what he does, you're immediately thinking they're the guys. Not saying they are. No one is, defending Mahomes' greatness more than I have on this very network. But at the same time, he's not playing well. And as you said, the Chiefs seem all smoke and mirrors anyway. The Bengals are obviously a wreck with their defense, but that offense is averaging 30 points a game. Their defense is just letting up 34 points a game. So we're having Burrow on a career year. Allen's having the sharpest year he's ever had. And Mahomes is taking a step back. Obviously, Mahomes' legacy at this much is solidified, but I think it's worth saying because it just goes to show there are a lot of quarterbacks, and I think after that third Super Bowl win, the most recent one out here in Vegas, we kind of got so caught up where it's like Mahomes and everyone else. Well, maybe as far as the resume, sure, but if you actually just watch and go off the eye test, the gap is not that big.
No, absolutely. The pure talent level is not that big. When you look at the guys that got drafted in this class, you got Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Patrick Mahomes all coming out in the same draft. There's arguments that you could say he's the third best talent out of those three.
And he didn't win a lot of Texas Tech either. He showed a lot of signs, but he didn't have some of the resumes some of those guys had.
There's people out there that can say that he was the third best player taken at quarterback position. However, you put Andy Reid in charge of the team. He does the schemes. They win championships. He goes down as probably the second best quarterback ever in our eyes right now. However, we're looking at if Josh Allen can win a couple Super Bowls, Lamar Jackson already has one. Maybe if he rambles off 2 or 3 more, you never know what you're going to talk about with these guys. Yeah. There definitely could be a talk for these guys to come in the mix.
And that's what makes it so fun. Steve, I wanted to, because even last night I was thinking about this. How do you gauge the card value of a player like Burrow, who's having such a great year, but the team is struggling in a racket where so much of it is based off the individual because it's a player card? Does that have any bearing, or is Burrow having the type of year he had, seeing his market skyrocket as a result?
Well, one of the things that happened with Burrow is that you actually had a big sell-off of Burrow for a period of time. And the reason Burrow was sold off is because he got hurt. They hid the wrist injury. You didn't know what was going to come back. I was on the record, and then look, I've got to swallow crow here, I guess, that I was on the record saying I didn't think he would ever come back and be the level of player that he had already been. And
to your I'm going to step in for you a little bit on this one. At the beginning of the season, Burrow didn't look like that. He looked like his wrist was hurting. He looked like he couldn't compete at that high level we're used to seeing him at. However, now he's just taken off.
Right.
He's gone.
The thing is, though, is that I will tell you this. It reminds me of an NBA team that runs, right? How many NBA teams that run win championships? Not many.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what that team is. That team's literally a track meet at this point. They're throwing the ball vertically down the field. Right? They're forcing teams like the Steelers yesterday to play
pace.
their game.
Yep.
And you know what? I think the bigger conversation isn't Burrow. I think the bigger conversation is talking about what Russell Wilson's
and that
doing.
was, you stemmed up my next question.
He literally has turned around all the speculation on him as a player. Man, is that scathing a little bit on, how him and Sean, work together, right? Yep. I don't know that he is as bad of a player as people are making him out in Denver. And then obviously he's still got quite a bit in the tank. I don't think it's a little bit in the tank. I think he's got quite a bit in the tank. And if you're a Pittsburgh fan, all of a sudden you got to be really excited.
Oh, I'll be the first to say it. People overreacted. Now, I was thinking this yesterday because it's easy to kind of play hindsight, it's 2020 and say, oh, I never jumped off the Russell Wilson bandwagon. There's a difference between saying he's washed and saying, oh, he'll be back. I was somewhere in the middle thinking he's not going to be what he was because in the last year in Seattle, we didn't see that either, even before he went to Denver. The last truly great Russell Wilson year we had from start to finish for the most part was 2020, the pandemic year. And then the last year in Seattle was shaky. 2022 was absolutely abysmal in Denver. And last year was actually probably better than people gave him credit for. It's just the team wasn't very good. So I think a lot of it was overreaction and exaggeration. A lot of it may be warranted because, again, quarterback is a volatile position. But when a guy has shown, Jimmy, to play that well and be that accurate with his passing in the past, it's hard to believe that like it's just completely gone. And we'll talk about Justin Tucker in a bit because maybe, he is done at this point. But Russell Wilson is showing, especially in that game you watched yesterday in that shootout, it looks like he's the same. It may have just been like a lapse.
Yeah, absolutely. With these old quarterbacks that are still playing in the league, you look at Aaron Rodgers, you look at Russell Wilson, the last thing to go for these guys is their arm strength.
Yeah.
Their legs go way before that. So, yes, we were looking at Denver. I think the schemes and stuff that Denver was trying to run with Russell Wilson was putting more aspect on him rolling out, using his legs, trying to get him to do these draws and these things that he's just not capable of doing anymore. He can sit back in the pocket and throw it better than anybody.
Yeah, the accuracy's there.
It's still there. He still has great arm. He's throwing the ball in Pittsburgh, and the weather there is terrible.
Yeah.
And he throws it just as good as he was throwing it back in his Seattle days. So his arm's not gone. His legs are gone, but he's still there.
And that's a great point. And not to cut you off, see, because people were constantly saying it in the Mike Tyson fight just based off of what's recent. People don't realize, even in combat sports, like that's something I've covered for a long time, your power is the last thing to go. It's the legs that go. Right. So if there's one thing you can hang your hat on Russell Wilson still being able to do, it's thread the needle.
Well, and the thing is when you think of a guy like Russell Wilson, and you go back, let's talk about what he's in and where he came from, right? He had Marshawn Lynch.
Yep.
He had Jimmy Graham, right? Both were very formidable at that time with that team on the offensive side.
Doug Baldwin, too.
Now, go to Denver, right? He had a Cortland Sutton that kind of liked to swat the ball out of the air a little bit for the 1 year, right?
Yeah.
And then you go beyond that, their running backs were hurt. They were constantly, right? There was constantly issues. Now, he's got Najee Harris. He's got Freiermuth.
And
Both
he's got
of them.
Pickens
Right.
is a dog.
And Pickens is a dog. And Pickens is about to get fined again. And I think he's okay with it.
Third straight week.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And he's okay with it. They just need to be careful that he doesn't get suspended for, doing it too often. But that guy's definitely out there telling, the entire world he's kind of becoming the Steve Smith that we remember, because Steve Smith fought. And Steve Smith
all the
fought
time.
all the time. And there's highlight videos now on George Pickens of him blowing up DBs.
Yeah.
Like there's highlight videos of it. And that to me is, tells you, that kind of guy. But when you have that and you're Russell Wilson, like that's all together. And then, let's talk about Aaron Rodgers for a minute, right? Because Aaron Rodgers today, the discussion is, should he be the quarterback?
Yeah.
Should he be the quarterback? Right? That's the question. And you look at it, Breece Hall's been great, right? Outside of Breece Hall, nothing has been good. The whole bring in all the old Green Bay Packers is not working.
Yeah, why do
right?
you bring in Devontae Adams if this is the offense you're going to run?
This was not done well at all. Obviously, you're having all kinds of shakeups there, all kinds of issues. To where Aaron last night was on, they asked him at the end, like, where do you go from here? And he just laughs and he goes, we just look at film. At this point, the season's done. That's what he's telling you.
And my friend texted me last night because I was just generally curious about like where in the ballpark he would rank him, just off a random conversation, because this is something we've never really done before. We saw his last few years in Green Bay not be very productive, but now visibly he is obviously just different at this point. And I asked my friend, where would you rank him? He's like, I don't really know definitively right now, but he is closer to the bottom 5 than he is the top 5. And I don't think we ever thought we'd say that about Aaron Rodgers, at least not now. Like, because again, there's been some injuries in the past, but we thought, at least before the Achilles, everything was going to be fine. And even this year, it seemed like he recovered from the Achilles okay. It's just nothing has clicked.
Yeah, he's definitely hit his wall.
Yeah.
He will retire at the end of the year.
I believe
Okay.
so,
Is
too.
what I think he's going to do.
There you go. That was my next
think
question.
I don't think he's having fun anymore, and a lot of these guys that are still playing at that age, they don't need the money. They
Right.
have more money than they know what to do with. They don't need the fame. They already
His
have
endorsements
it. They
alone.
already have
Absolutely.
it. Anything they want, he'll get into some sort of broadcasting or something like that. But his days on the football field are done.
I'm with you. At this point, I think it's almost better for all parties involved. And it's easy for us to say sitting in our position. But the Jets, they have maybe the most talented team collectively they've ever had on paper. And the result, not only is it not any different, it seems like they're even worse. It seems like 2 years ago when it was Mike White, they were overachieving, remember a few years ago. Even Zach Wilson had a few good games. Nothing is going right for either New York football team right now. We talked about the Giants last week. And of course, obviously we could go on and on about the Jets.
There's another quarterback to talk about too in this regards. and that's Kirk Cousins.
Yes.
Because as of today, they're asking, is Kirk Cousins going to start this week?
And that's my next question for you. This is an interesting predicament. We may have briefly touched on it last week, Steve. And Jimmy, I want your opinion on this as well. Michael Penix Jr., obviously, highly touted rookie, great passing prospect. We've seen some limited reps of him a few weeks ago. There's going to be a lot of talk with the fan base, with the media, for him to get out there. How do you gauge a situation with the card market with a player like Cousins, who at one point this season was really, really hot, and someone like Penix, who I think a lot of people think at this point could see some action before his rookie year's done?
So in the sports card hobby, you always have to think that people look at it from a standpoint of, what have you done for me lately? And what have you proven to me? And unfortunately with Kirk Cousins, he's never actually gotten off the ground. The reason he's never gotten off the ground and continue to probably not is the fact that he's not trusted. They do not, like, the hobby doesn't trust Kirk Cousins to go out and win a big game. And I know he won a Monday night game this year, but outside of that, there hasn't been those things. And even earlier in the year, when they were blowing some teams out,
a lot of that
running up.
Bijan Robinson.
It was Bijan having monster games and everything. And if you take someone like Penix and you bring him in, and he's a facilitator, he's going to be a lot closer to Tua, right? As far as accuracy and putting the ball on time. And that's what that's what his game is.
He's
and don't
known
get
for
me
that.
wrong, he can flip it up, but he's one of those guys that he's not going to go out there and throw it 60 yards in the air. He's going to throw it 40, 45 accurately.
Yeah.
Right. And that's going to open up that offense for them. And let's talk about a division that, like, it's still within reach.
Oh, absolutely.
Buccaneers are not by any means crowned the champions of that division.
Before that loss yesterday, they were technically leading the division the way it was looking as far as everything as aligned. But I'm completely with you, especially with the weapons they have. You have Drake London. You have a great running back out of the backfield in Robinson. You have some pieces there, and we know Penix can stretch the field with accuracy. Like Steve said, it's not so much necessarily arm strength as it is the deep ball accuracy. That's why I got him comparisons to someone like a Joe Burrow. But focusing on the NFC South right now, Jimmy, do you have a strong opinion on any particular team? Because I actually want to get your opinion on another quarterback who's kind of not ascending, but improving. That's Bryce Young. And if you look at the two quarterbacks who were taken in 2023, as of right now, based off their rookie year, going into 2024, a lot of people thought Bryce Young was already a bust. C.J. Stroud was the truth. He was the future. Right now, Bryce Young's playing better football.
Absolutely. He has definitely outplayed everybody from that class so far, and you could tell that he there's a little fight in him.
Yeah.
Because once he got benched, you
Chip
could
on the
tell,
shoulder.
Yeah, you could tell he didn't take that lightly. Once he got that benching, and they went to the Red Rifle himself, Andy Dalton, and once they brought him in, you could see him on the sideline say, "No, I'm going to get this job back. I'm going to win this job." And now he's showing it on the field, like, I deserve to be here. I deserve to be an NFL quarterback. And he does throw a good ball. He's not getting any help from his wide receivers. So
No.
He has more drops with the Carolina Panthers than I think any team in the NFL right now. So if you take away those drops and you add those numbers to him, they'll be astronomically better than what they are right now.
Focusing on Carolina, I'm curious to hear both of your guys' thoughts on this. What about a player like a Chuba Hubbard, who maybe not be a household name, but has been really productive, has earned himself an additional contract, and has really found himself a place in the league, much like fellow NFC South running back Bucky Irving, who we will get to in a second. How do you gauge a player like that, who may not be a big name for the mainstream, but is a bigger name for the sports nerds, right? He was great at Oklahoma State. If you're a college fan, you're going to follow his career. Is there some type of value there for him?
Yes. However, the running back market's always light.
Okay.
You're never really going to pay for a running back as anywhere near what you're going to pay for these quarterbacks. But yes, you can get Hubbard cards for literally nothing right now, and he's probably top 10 right now in running backs among the NFL.
I just want to throw this out there that someone drafted him on his fantasy team.
There you go.
There you go.
And that's what I'm saying.
He's had him all year.
Potential sleeper. Now, Big Duck guy, you wanted to mention this Oregon rookie class. We went on about Bo Nix last week. We'll go on and on a little bit later as we preview Monday Night Football. But he ain't the only Duck who's balling right now. Bucky Irving is getting it done, and he is shown to be an absolute stud. I was just happy he found himself a place in the league. Now he's a key focal point. And even though the NFC South may not be very good, fellas, it is very interesting because you have Carolina, who is trying to do everything they can to separate themselves from that Giants, Raiders type of tier, Jacksonville type of tier of football. football. Tampa Bay's right there. Atlanta's right there. New Orleans is a bit of a mess, but even then you have New Orleans, at least when Taysom Hill's out there, they're always at least halfway interesting.
Well, and just in, Taysom Hill's out for the
exactly,
season.
and that was going to be my another question of mine. What do you make in between the Hill injury, in between the Buccaneers struggling, and the fact that the Falcons can't really find a consistent point in their offense? What are your thoughts in the NFC South?
Well, the Bucs can blow anybody out at any time. If the wide receivers are playing the way the wide receivers can play, and we talked about Mike Evans yesterday, that one-handed catch up on the edge of the end zone, like if you needed to see one of the best receivers in the game, that's how it's done. He they can blow anybody out at any time, right? But their defense can't get the same players on the field for multiple plays, let alone an entire game. Right. They're constantly out. They're constantly chipped up. It's little tiny knick-knack injuries. And just to be honest, that kind of comes back to strength and conditioning, right? Comes back to how those teams are put together. I don't know that team sustains for the long haul. Look, the Panthers, they got nothing to lose. They have nothing to lose at this point except to go out and to see what they can show me. I think when the dust settles, I think the Buccaneers win the division. Yeah. I don't think they've run away with it, though. I think they thought they were going to, and they're not. And, it's going to be interesting. This quarterback change, if the Falcons make this quarterback change, that's the one thing that I could see that could actually change the entire complexion of that division. Because if Michael Penix comes in and reels off 3 or 4 straight wins, then all of a sudden it's going to be like, okay, this team is actually a contender with a relevant play set of players with Bijan, with Drake London, like you said, and so on. So you have, you have guys like that are doing those things. And, that's also happening in other divisions as well.
And at their best, we've seen Tampa and Atlanta stack up strictly because of talent. Obviously, it was early in the season, and Philadelphia's defense was struggling immensely compared to how they are now. We saw the big Monday night game. We saw the win that Tampa had on the early Sunday game, a few weeks after that or something like that. So we have seen, even though it was early for Philadelphia, we have seen the talent and the quarterback play when they're at their best of those teams really get them over the hump as far as competitive opposition. We'll see if that continues down the stretch. Again, it's probably the weakest division in football right now, at least next to the AFC South. But I actually want to focus on there as well because, Jimmy, I just asked you kind of about the Bryce Young situation as far as how he's kind of had an uptick. We mentioned it by comparison, C.J. Stroud. He's not playing terrible, but when you have the expectations like you have with a rookie year like that, which is like an all-time rookie year, it's definitely come back down to earth. You could call it a sophomore slump if you want, but I want to ask you about kind of the contrast between his value and Joe Mixon out of the same backfield, who is a big reason why Cincinnati, granted their offense is still great, but is a big reason why Cincinnati kind of as right now is in a mess because losing a player like Joe Mixon is reflective of where the Bengals are as a front office. They're not paying their best players. Even Jamar Chase and T. Higgins aren't exactly happy, or they didn't come into the season happy, right?
T. Higgins isn't for sure.
Exactly. So they and Jamar Chase obviously before the pretty much the whole offseason was unhappy.
Absolutely.
So Cincinnati, even though most of their guys are still out there, it just shows where they are as an organization. Mixon, on the other hand, shows how valuable he is for Houston. I think a lot of guys, Jimmy, forgot how good he is, how dynamic he is. What's the market reflecting for him?
So with Joe Mixon, it's the running back class.
And,
unfortunately,
not so much value.
Yeah, he falls into that. But yes, he's gone up about 35% in his card value over the last 8 to 10 weeks.
Because he was hurt earlier too.
He was hurt.
Yeah.
He didn't do much, and he was always on and off the field when he was with the Bengals.
Always.
So now that he's on a team, he's on the Texans. He's the guy. There's no one else that's coming in there stealing reps from him or doing anything like that. So he's putting up these numbers that are amazing. Mm-hmm. But why is that Texas offense scoring?
Yeah.
That's the thing. The Texans offense sometimes is like they come out like gangbusters and they'll score, 17 points and then they'll shut it down for 3 quarters.
Like we saw against the Lions and some other games, they just go cold.
I mean, the way I see it and watching them play is they get to where, like early in the game, it looks like they're letting C.J. Stroud kind of like change calls, pick up coverages, all this stuff. When they come back from the second half, they look like a team that literally is running through a walkthrough. And it's constantly, okay, we're going to run up the gut. We're going to do this. And they're not built strong enough up front to be able to run the ball 40 times a game. They're not built that way. That offensive line is not built that way. That offensive line they pull, they run the option type plays, they run those
tosses,
tosses, stuff like that. And so when you all of a sudden are trying to get them for 6-7 plays in a 10-play series, push up, go north, they're not built to be able to do that, and that's what happens. And then now the timing is off, and that offense is 100% reliable on timing.
Yeah, they were hit with a lot of injuries too, so they're just starting to get back healthy now. Good time to get healthy for them.
Nico Collins, right?
They're going to try to get back in that playoff hunt, try to press in for the wild card. We'll see if that actually happens for them. As far as CJ Stroud, we were talking him as MVP talk at the beginning of the year, and where did all that talk go? I think that talk went out the window and gone.
Fast.
Yeah, within 2 weeks, we're like, all right, he's not the guy that we all thought he was in the offseason.
Even I think it was that week 2 game, the Sunday night game against Chicago, really early in the season. Like even then, it was automatically clear he is not going to have the same type of year, just because a lot of times it just happens for guys. Like they just get out there. Sometimes it's paralysis by analysis. They overthink. Most of the time it's because guys get film on you. Defensive coordinators spend, especially guys in your division, they spend a whole offseason.
That's exactly it.
They scout against you. They know they're going to play against you 2 times. So I think that has a lot to do with it as well. But the good ones always push through that. A lot of times you see that return to form in year 3. We'll see if that's the case for him. But here we are, and also in year 2 for fellow AFC South quarterback Anthony Richardson. He's hard to gauge because you never really know what you're going to get each and every week, but you do know you get a very dynamic athlete every week. What is the market saying about him?
He's up and down.
Yeah.
His numbers.
Just like his play.
Yeah, just like his play, just like his benching, just like I think his attitude is just up and down. Mm-hmm. Some days he's out there and you're like, oh, this Colts team has a chance to win the Super Bowl with this guy. This guy's going to lead him to the promised land. And then the very next week, he looks like he's so disengaged, does not want to be there, and actually pulls himself out of a game. Hey. So it's like, who is this guy? We never really saw what he could do in college. We only saw that 1 year.
Yeah.
So now we're finally starting to see who he is year two as the NFL quarterback. I don't think he's the guy. His numbers as far as the card market are concerned definitely aren't. Because now he's trending way lower than everyone else that's in that draft for him.
So it's basically like an apparition, smoke and mirrors type of thing. Even fantasy football, he could do wonders for you, but does that necessarily mean he's the guy in Indianapolis? We don't know. I mean, hell, Jacksonville's asking the exact same question with Trevor Lawrence, and obviously with that hit yesterday.
Oh my God.
Man.
I wanted to get your guys' opinion on that before we kind of move on to some other things that are still on the table here. I guess if you're watching it, everyone's going to have an opinion on, the current state of the physicality in the league. Yeah, he could have slid a little bit earlier. That was a dirty hit. It was a dirty hit.
There's not one person that's going to watch that play and say that he didn't know what he was doing in that situation.
Yeah.
And if you look back at his, what was Shahir?
Yeah.
Is that his last name?
Yep.
You look back at his career. He did it with the Niners. Mm-hmm. He did it with every team that he's been with. He's a dirty player. He's done dirty things. He possibly could have cost Trevor Lawrence his career. And going into it, you're looking at it like, oh my God, did he just kill this guy? Because we're coming off a college player that just passed away 3 weeks from a hit that he suffered 3 weeks ago.
Yes.
So this game is very dangerous. People are dying from this game. You cannot have hits like that.
And it's a cold, brutal reminder sometimes because, again, football's so mainstream and we view it so casually. Sometimes you forget about the physicality. You forget about the element of violence.
Yeah.
And it's actually a growing conversation in college and the NFL about, what's better? There's a lot of growing debate. Is sliding better? Are they not teaching sliding the right way? Are guys sliding too late to try to pick up extra yardage? Are they better off diving head first? But either way, the second Shakir hits him, it doesn't matter anymore. You know what I mean? Now it's all about the culprit, and we saw the reaction to it. I mean, it was a chippy weekend anyway with all the stuff going down to college football. So, I mean, I guess, we were kind of used to it at that point. But if anything, Trevor Lawrence tweeted in the aftermath. He's okay. He appreciates everyone checking in. He's one of those guys, we don't really know what to make of his career yet at this point. But we've seen the flashes. And when you see flashes like that, when you see talent like that, you hope he has a future. And hopefully he still does as far as, getting back on track. We'll see what the protocol is for moving forward, but definitely scary to see.
Yeah, and a guy like that, I actually believe that there's a chance that he gets suspended for the year. Yeah, because he's already been fined multiple times this season for hits, And that has been one of the things. And it just came out, which is pretty unique. So Trevor Lawrence actually has the final call on what the punishment will be. So essentially the NFL enacted this rule where if a player off of an illegal activity injures a player and puts them in risk of, say, their career, which in this case it's deemed that way, then the commissioner will actually be going to that player. They're waiting until he passes concussion protocol. So earliest it would probably be Thursday that you would hear about this. And Trevor Lawrence actually gets to kind of levy the gauntlet on what happens to him. I think even if Trevor Lawrence says suspend him 2 games and not the season or whatever it is, I believe the commissioner is going to look at it and say, no, I'm going to suspend him for the year. They're trying to avoid this. And the biggest thing with the defensive players in this situation is that they're told, if you think the quarterback is deking, right, go high. Worst case scenario, right, your hands are around the head region, but you're not putting full impact into the head and neck region, right? And that's what they're trying to avoid. And this has been discussed. These guys sit in meetings and have these discussions. And look, you're right. It wasn't just this. There was other plays throughout the weekend. I actually think this was one of the bigger weekends for the NFL that you're probably going to get the list of fines is going to be a lot deeper than it has been in the past weeks.
It'll be like a line in the sand type of moment.
It will be. And you're going to have them throwing some people under the bus and saying, look, this is not going to happen like it is. And I think, unfortunately, Aziz is going to be the poster child for it.
It's a great point, too, because often with these type of controversies, these type of situations, the only way you see any type of change or at least prevention in the future is to make a statement, is to make some type of disciplinary authoritative action. And we may see that, but it's a great clarification on your end, Steve, about how there's a consultation process essentially involved as well. And that may have not always been the case, but again, it just shows how they're trying to, fine tune those type of things. Really quick, for all those tuning in, we appreciate you. We're actually going to keep phone lines open for the next 15 minutes if any of y'all want to join in on the conversation. And again, like, subscribe on all of our Go Live Vegas platforms. Jump in the live chat room as well on the comments. And again, that phone line is open, so we'd love to hear from you as we move along here. And there's still plenty to talk about. And guys, we're already, 40 minutes into the show at this point.
And we haven't even talked about Ohio State.
Exactly. Or Justin Tucker or a myriad of other things. I actually want to kind of bundle all college together because there's a lot to talk about even on the local.
I just wanted to take a shot.
No, and I love it. Because it's like, and I was even driving in, listening to Sports Talk Radio, and lo and behold, what are they talking about? Ohio State losing to Michigan for the 4th year in a row. So it's one of those things that's inevitable. But at one point, what was inevitable is Justin Tucker making field goals. Wow. And now we're at a point in time where, guys, this was hard to watch. I
felt bad for the guy.
I did too. We have seen the yips. We have seen mental barriers. We have seen, turmoil and ruts and stuff like that and slumps in a career. This guy truly looks lost. And if it was just an elite kicker, a Pro Bowl kicker, fine. That would be weird enough. But him?
No, he was, I can't say is, he was hands down the best kicker we've ever seen.
Yeah.
There's
insane.
Nobody in a football realm that will say Justin Tucker wasn't the best kicker in football for so many years. Now you're watching him miss these kicks after kicks after kicks. It's like, oh my God, you feel bad for him.
He's hurting the team.
Because you could just see it in his face. He knows how to kick a football, for God's sake. He's kicked it 1,000,000 times.
Yeah.
Something's lost in his mind.
100%.
Justin Tucker never looked like a kicker. He looked like a player.
An athlete.
Yeah.
Right? And this year, he's looked like a kicker. He doesn't have that confidence. He doesn't have that swag. He doesn't walk out with it. I have him on fantasy, which is even worse, right? Because he cost me 1 week already.
Yep.
You look at what is happening there with him, and then Harbaugh coming out and being like, "Well, we're not moving off Justin Tucker." I totally get that. The vote of confidence is there and all that stuff. But I will tell you this: they will be going for 2 much more often the rest of the season. So that, from a betting angle,
going for 2 and
going for 2
and fourth down.
Going for it on 4th downs.
It's going to change the entire dynamic of what is already a good offense. And I'm so with you, Steve, because that's what Harbaugh is supposed to say. That's fine. The bigger question is, how are you going to counter it? Because let's say Justin Tucker does get his confidence back, does get his groove back. That still may take a while, even if he slowly but surely starts to improve and get a little bit back to his old self. Until that point, what do you do? And you just said it. You are going to have to go for it more on fourth and short situations. The red zone play calling is going to be much different. The betting aspects, the totals, the over-unders are going to be way different. Absolutely. There's a lot at play here, and it's a great point. You also brought that he at one point looked like a true athlete and carried himself like an NFL player. I know it sounds cliche, but he had a bit of a dog in him. He had an edge. He was warming up near the Kansas City end zone in the AFC Championship next to Mahomes and Kelsey and didn't even care. Like he had that linebacker type of mentality to him. And as fun as that was, it only really worked because he was always splitting the uprights easily at that. And
Absolutely.
now
they were always tacking on 3. Right?
Yes.
They were always tacking on 3. Now they're not always tacking on 3.
And we saw that hurt them yesterday.
And this is exactly it, because they were up, 9-0 on yesterday, right? On the Eagles,
Philly,
with a chance to make it 12, right? And then there you go. And then from there, what happens? The rest of the team unravels. Part of it unraveling, what is that? Well, I can tell you what it is. It's that once you don't have the confidence to your kicker, now you're like, okay, we have to get the extra yard.
Yeah.
We have to push ourselves. We have to do that. And then on top of it, we mentioned it before, but the Eagles defense, not only is the Eagles defense the best in football, and yes, I love my Chargers and I believe they're top 5, but that Eagles team is the best. That Eagles secondary tier, that second tier, their backups are starters.
They're too deep. Yeah, 100%.
For most teams in the
100%.
NFL. That team is extremely deep on defense,
Yeah.
and it showed yesterday because they could swap anybody on spy with Lamar, and Lamar could not get outside.
And it would work, and it's a testament to what a great job Vic Fangio has done.
Yes.
It's a testament to and we talked about this last week, in the front office, during draft day, during the offseason, the free agency period, every spring, this team and Howie Roseman really knows what they're doing. Say what you want about Nick Sirianni, the head coach, but when you have talent like that, you can cover up flaws with the coaching, and Jalen Hurts isn't turning it over like we saw him do the last, basically all of last season during that meltdown. And of course, Barkley, as we talked about last week for the first episode, we opened the show with it. He's the X factor, but I think that's so spot on. This is a defensive team right now. Even if Barkley winds up winning the MVP, the defense is the story.
Yes.
It's the depth. It's the young players. It's the Quinyon Mitchells. It's the Cooper DeJeans. It's Jalen Carter in his second year. They have hit at the draft tremendously well on that side of the ball, and they essentially shut down the most dynamic, explosive offense, not statistically the best, but the most dangerous offense athletically in the league. And we saw them tackle well against Lamar. We saw them tackle well against Derrick Henry.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is I haven't seen Derrick Henry get tackled
and go backwards
like that consistently in a game, and I don't remember when.
And Jimmy, I want to get your thoughts on Baltimore, but here's one of my biggest takeaways yesterday. Lamar looked really accurate throwing the ball. We saw some of the throws to Mark Andrews, the one that Bateman nearly brought in, just couldn't keep, stay in bounds. And it just makes me think, I still don't think they're all the way there. And everyone wants to say, they're a team that can't win the big games. Lamar chokes. This wasn't on Lamar. Even with the Philadelphia defense smothering him, he still threw the ball well. I think they're still one weapon short. I think as good as Zay Flowers is, he's a better number 2. He's better at dragging across the field, going underneath, finding the holes. They need a Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf type of guy who can really stretch the field as like that big body number 1 X receiver. Like, doesn't it kind of feel that way? There's just a piece missing there.
They should have went out and got Devontae Adams. Devontae should not be on the Jets. He should be on the Ravens right now. If he's on that team, they're hands down the favorite to win it all. They just have no weapons that can catch the ball. They have Lamar Jackson running the ball.
Mark Andrews.
Yeah. But he's coming on late. He started the game, first 6 games. He didn't even have a touchdown.
Coming back from the injury, too. And it's nice to see, but it's all like, there's been times where in the past you think, because even Isaiah Likely's had a letdown of a year, right? So, there's never, until maybe the past couple of weeks with Andrews coming on, Zay Flowers is a great player, but you can't get downfield in timely fashion. Yeah.
Look how many drops. I think he had 3 yesterday in yesterday's game, and they're not throwing the ball, but once per every 3 rushes.
Yeah.
So you're not getting that many options. So if you get those chances, you have to catch the ball. And he's dropping balls, and it's costing his team.
And it sucks because Lamar, in a time where everyone now is saying the one thing that may be still holding him back is his ability as a passer, Lamar is showing leaps and bounds in his accuracy downfield, in his delivery of the football, and sometimes his weapons are leaving him hanging out to dry. I still think Baltimore is a very good team, but I just think they're not quite there. That game yesterday against Philadelphia showed just that. But I got to ask you guys, looking ahead, now, is Philadelphia surefire the best team in the league, in your opinion?
I think that you're looking at the Bills and the Eagles and the Lions, because I don't want to discredit the Lions at all. It's easy to say, oh, well, they play indoors. They do this, they do that. Like, I don't care. They're winning, and they're winning big, and they're accurate, and they're really efficient, and their defense isn't on the field for crazy amounts of time and all that, which is why their defensive issues haven't quite caught up to them.
And their injuries,
now,
too.
In the playoffs, I think I would probably edge the Eagles over the Lions in a heads-up match.
Yeah.
And the reason being is because I believe that Eagles defense is going to eliminate some of those things that the Lions are doing really well. And the biggest thing I think the Eagles take away is running between the tackles.
And that's such a big part because yesterday you look on Twitter, you look on social media, the Ravens doing a great job bottling up Saquon, and you just felt eventually he was going to break one. And that's always that, like, Jimmy, that constantly looming feeling. You need insurance points against Philly. That's what Baltimore couldn't get. They couldn't get the insurance points. Obviously, a lot of that would have been Justin Tucker even. Obviously, you want to take 6 over 3, but they couldn't even get the 3. You need to be able to score. I know it's easier said than done. You can't just say, oh, we're going to score every drive on a defense like Philly. But at the same time, you need a little help because eventually you're not going to be able to stop that running game, that offensive line, Saquon Barkley out of the backfield, even Jalen Hurts as a dual threat using his legs.
Yep.
Like, eventually they're going to pop one. So when they do pop one, you have to make sure you're in a position where it doesn't break your back. And that's what's going to be so interesting, especially given the fact that if they do get the number 1 seed in Detroit, doesn't get it, that's playing into Philadelphia's favor. Jared Goff doesn't do well in the cold weather, and that's a defense that, despite being talented and well drafted, they're hurt right now. So even though on paper, at their very best and in good weather conditions, I think it's still very much a toss-up, especially since Detroit can really run the football, as we saw on Thanksgiving Thursday, and we really have seen all year long. But if you really look in between the nuts and bolts of it all, Philly seems to be trending upward a little bit more right now.
Yeah, and I don't take a lot out of that Chicago game over the weekend with Detroit because with that game, it's on Thanksgiving. You know everybody's showing up. That's the one game that everybody circles on their calendar every year, those Thanksgiving days.
It's like a rivalry game in college football.
Of course.
Yeah.
They circled that game. They were going to play up for that game. Chicago showed up later than they did. They should have had a chance to win the game.
As we'll get to here in the last 5 minutes. Yep,
So-
with some hot takes there that really are cold takes.
They had their chance to win the game. I think Detroit played a good game. They're still the best team in the NFC. I know the Eagles are coming on strong.
Right.
I do think if they do get that home field, they have to have that home field advantage.
You want to be at Ford Field in Detroit.
You want to be there in December or in January. It's going to be late January.
Inside.
You don't want to be at Lincoln Field
No.
playing in January in Philadelphia because you know they have the craziest fans in the world playing at Lincoln Field in the play. It's going to be an NFC Championship game. I don't want to play that game.
And plus, with their health, normally a lot of times when a team's hot, a lot of times that first round bye, you don't want to see them get because it kind of kills momentum. They may be a team that could actually really use it right now.
Yep.
You get some guys healthy as they can. Aiden Hutchinson, they say, if they were to make the Super Bowl, he could potentially be back. I know that's a long shot and it probably won't happen, but ultimately my point is that you could at least, if you get that first round bye, go into the divisional game, which would be your first matchup of the playoffs, with as healthy of a roster as you've probably had since late October, early November. And it's just one of those things where, like you said, it's a rivalry game on Thanksgiving. The Bears are going to be up for it. Caleb Williams has actually been playing a lot better as of late. And Detroit has won 7 in a row? Like if Detroit were to drop one in the next couple of weeks against the Buffalo or even against maybe a random one against the San Francisco 49ers, they just catch them on an off game. They play the Packers again in what's a huge game. Like if they drop one, I think it's more so a reflection of, it's the NFL. Like it's hard to win 8-9 games in a row, right?
Very hard.
Yeah.
Very hard.
Yeah, so I think that's going to be a key thing to look at. Really quick, speaking of the Packers, and we'll kind of wrap this up, just reflecting on the NFL talk, reflecting on Thanksgiving. Do you think Green Bay can be any kind of a threat to Detroit? I don't think they wind up winning the division, but in the next game they play, because the first one at Lambeau, Detroit completely handled. The Packers weren't really much for them at all.
I have a little hesitancy, and the only reason being is because I don't know what receivers are showing up each week for Green Bay. They one week look like they have the most talented core in the league, and then the next week they swat everything out of the air, can't get themselves open, and are constantly, pulling all kinds of nonsense. I think they're the most flagged. Those receivers, I believe that they've got the most flags of all the receivers out there, because they hold, they grab, they push, they pull, they like all of those
Handsy.
things constantly, and that's fine during the regular season, but it doesn't translate well when it gets into big games and playoff. And look, this game coming up is as big of a playoff game for them,
No doubt.
as they've had. Whereas Detroit, it doesn't matter. I don't think they care as much as Green Bay does here. Green Bay's situation is really going to fall, though, on how well they stick to the running game.
Yes, because Jacobs has been a huge force as of late,
Right.
Josh Jacobs. And we saw against Miami, I'm not going to overreact too much to that, because I truly felt that should have happened. You have Miami, you have a quarterback who's from Hawaii, played at Alabama, SEC, and is now playing in South Florida. We know about Tua in the cold weather. Actually didn't play that poorly, but the Dolphins collectively just seemed to go into a shell, at least what they potentially could be. Green Bay, they were completely playing into their favor. Prime time, Lambeau Field. It was snowing earlier in the week. Like everything here pointed to Green Bay, but I don't think we automatically have to jump to, but now they're shortening the gap between them and the Lions.
Yeah, I think that was a setup game for Miami. Miami
Right.
had no chance in that
Not
game.
at all.
Going in, you knew exactly what was going to happen.
Predictable.
I don't even think anybody watched it. We all watched the first half and knew what was going to happen. Tua's numbers got a little bit better because they were behind for
Garbage
the whole
time,
game.
yeah.
And he was throwing the ball majority of the second
Call
half.
that the Caleb Williams factor.
100%.
Yes. So you threw for 235 and 2 touchdowns. Well, no, you were getting your ass kicked. And then you
Fought your way back
fought
in.
your back way
Happens
and,
a lot.
and lost the game by 7. Congratulations. We clap for you.
Right.
No, you had no chance in that game. Green Bay came out. They put their foot on your throat. They stomped you into the ground, and then they moved on.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see what's going to happen with this Green Bay team. I think they have a chance. If they play a home playoff game, they definitely have a chance to win at least one playoff game. And it's the playoffs. You never know what's going to happen.
And the one thing, not to cut you off, Steve,
No,
the
you're
one
good.
thing I really do trust about Green Bay is that they have a hell of a coach.
Oh,
There's one thing I love about the Packers, it's Matt LaFleur. And if there's one thing about the NFC landscape that I think they may actually have the edge against most people in that field, it would be Matt LaFleur. Personnel, maybe not. Even quarterback, maybe not. Jordan Love is again, maybe not to CJ Stroud, because he's not a rookie, but 2023 is kind of viewed as his rookie year because that was his first, cumulative, full-blown starting season. And you look at him now in his second season starting now, it's picked up a little bit because there were some injuries obviously earlier in the year, but even then, he's a young quarterback. He's actually an old quarterback, but he's a young old quarterback. That's what makes Jordan Love so interesting. And he only has so much experience. He's every now and then going to have those games where we think, okay, maybe he's not quite up to snuff, at least what we think he is. But collectively, as Steve just said, the offense is going to breathe through running the ball anyway.
So the way this is going to work out, though, just for Green Bay, just to think of, Green Bay makes the playoffs. Like if the season ended right now today, right? Green Bay is the 6th seed. So they would go to Seattle,
Yeah.
and they would play in Seattle, and then most likely boat race Seattle. And then they would go and they would play the winner of Atlanta, Minnesota. Right? So
You're looking at NFC Championship.
yeah,
type.
you know
They
what
could
I'm
make
saying?
it there.
Well,
if
actually,
that's
no.
who they match up with.
I'm saying I lied. They would actually go and they would play. They would play Detroit.
Oh, okay.
They would play
The
Detroit.
third matchup of the year.
Yeah. So, from that standpoint, like thinking of it, I think Green Bay needs to win this week, because they need to keep their record up there at the top. Because I don't think there's any question that you're going to have. It looks like the two wild cards are definitely coming out of the North, right? So you're going to have a division winner, and you're going to have 2 wild cards come out of the North, because the rest of the league is at 500 or less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? You have 2 divisions that are being decided by a 500 team and a team slightly over 500.
Yeah.
So, at this point, like, I don't think that the question lies on where they're going to end up. I don't think it matters whether Green Bay finishes 4th or if they finish 6th.
Right.
I don't think it matters.
Because for some teams, it's the road of least resistance, the path of least resistance. Your seeding is going to have a lot to do with immediately who you play first, which then in turn will affect the rest of the postseason.
And there's no one sitting here that sees New Orleans, the Falcons, any of these teams reeling off 5 straight wins, 4 straight wins to wrap the season. Like, it's just not going to happen.
No,
so they're already comfortable, but them winning this week, this is their playoff game to say, okay, we're going to be where we are set in seeding.
And it's such a crucial point because the Packers are really just a recipient of being in a tough division this year. You know, and any other year, a few years ago when Detroit really hadn't ascended yet, you know, you have Minnesota with Darnold and the O'Connell offense, those weapons, Addison, Jefferson, Hawkinson, Aaron Jones. I mean, that offense is going to continue to be productive. Detroit, best team in the league, quite possibly anyway. If it weren't for those two teams, we'd probably be talking about them a little bit more, especially since Green Bay, you guys know this, given your market, given your industry, is such a public team, despite being a small market.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things where the Packers are naturally going to have, like the Steelers, a lot of attention, a lot of buzz. Sometimes it's warranted, sometimes it's not. We'll see if it winds up being the former, because with Pittsburgh, that certainly appears to be the case. But really quick, our final thoughts, and we put a bow on the Thanksgiving weekend and look at a Monday night. We could talk all we want, especially me and you, Jimmy, about the Giants, and we could talk about the Raiders. At this point, them two in Jacksonville are competing for the number 1 pick in the draft. The Giants are just abysmal. The Raiders actually pretty much had as good of opportunity as anybody all year long to beat Kansas City, and we saw how that ended. It's pretty much the most brutal, heartbreaking, disastrous way you could possibly ask for a game to end, unless you're the Chicago Bears playing, you know, 24 hours before. We don't have to analyze what happened at this point. If you follow sports media, you've heard about it. People can talk about it till they're blue in the face, and naturally so. But I just have to ask you guys, what was your initial reaction? Because we don't have to explain why it was stupid to not call a timeout when you have a timeout. What was your guys' reaction sitting there? I don't know if you had family, loved ones, friends around you for the holiday. What were you guys thinking?
Well, I was sitting there watching the game with my family,
Yeah.
and I had a nice little 6-leg parlay going that was going to pay me $50,000 if I needed St. Brown to score a touchdown. So I'm hoping. I'm like, tie this game up, get Detroit the ball back. Let's see. I might have a chance at this. Sure enough, as time was ticking down, I'm thinking to myself, wait, there's only 10 seconds left. What is he doing? Someone on the sideline, please call a timeout. Somebody do your job.
Yeah.
And they just let it just squander. And I was screaming at the top of my lungs watching this game because I had money on it. Yeah. So I'm like, please call a timeout. Do something.
I thought maybe the broadcast was glitching. No lie. I thought he actually called the timeout, and the graphic, the production truck team just didn't adjust it.
Because you see that at times where the
Yes.
time
I
keeps
was watching-
going
yes.
and they already have something.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I was watching Caleb Williams, and Caleb Williams goes to his ear and then goes like this, looks at his guys, goes back to his ear, and he's waiting. Nothing. And he's like, what is going on? What is happening here? And honestly, look, the guy, he got shipped out of town. They're a dumpster fire. Milo, you were 100% correct in your comment there. The Bears are a dumpster fire.
Yep.
And it's unfortunate because they've got good skill position players and they've got some stuff coming. Real quick before we go.
I was going to say, you hear the music. We got to tee it up, Steve.
I
Go ahead.
have to.
Yes.
It is Oregon and everyone else in college football right now, and I couldn't be more happy.
I love it.
All I got to say is, let's go Rebels. One game. We win this one game. We're in the top 12, baby.
100%. That's it. You have a lot of win-in your in scenarios with the conference championships, and now with everything the way it's shaped out in the Mountain West, we go live Vegas. We pride ourselves on being a national network in terms of our coverage, but we can't shy away from the Vegas focus. This is big for the town. If the Raiders don't want to do it, the Rebels will. If they beat the Broncos, they came close in the first matchup. They go up to Boise for this one for the conference title. Like you said, Jimmy,
We're
they will
going to
be
find
in.
out two things in this game. And Anthony, you asked about it, and this is a great point for us to touch on. One, how real is UNLV? Because this Boise State team is very good.
Yep.
And they're always built as that. And two, is Ashton Jeanty the best running back coming out this year or not?
Yep.
And right now it looks like he could be.
He has to be.
But also at the same time, we still don't have a complete body of work against some of the bigger teams.
And we'll see that in the playoff, assuming they get the job done.
Exactly.
They are the favorites. And Ashton will be right there with Travis Hunter in New York, along with Dylan Gabriel, maybe a few others here and there. We'll find that out soon. But they're all going to be finalists for the Heisman Trophy. There will definitely be a debate as to who wins it. But before we get there, obviously, a lot to be determined for the conference championships that we set up, the college football playoff. I mean, hell, we could have done a whole show just recapping the rivalry week festivities. Obviously, the big takeaway there, Ohio State out of the Big Ten championship. They'll be playing Penn State will now be playing Steve's Ducks in the Big Ten championship. Oregon gets that done. They'll be the only undefeated team, the only undefeated conference champion. Exactly.
They're ranked 4th.
Yep.
To start the week, there's no way that anybody would have said they would be 4th.
Absolutely.
But after the melee of what became the college football weekend.
And now you have a situation in the ACC where Clemson can get in because Miami lost, even though Clemson lost to South Carolina within an hour, basically, not even like 30 minutes. Clemson's playoff hopes went from being nixed to back on track just because now they're in the conference championship. We'll get a little bit more into the college in the next week's episode. Third time's a charm. But again, when it's an hour and you have so much to talk in the NFL world, obviously you're going to be a little short on time. Really quick before we get out of here, just really quick, give me your pick on the Monday night game.
I'm not even watching.
There you go.
You're not even going to watch the Monday night game tonight?
Well, and then obviously it gives them a little more time really quick before we get out of here. I like it because I'm with you guys. I don't think it's going to be much of a contest. Obviously, the snow game with Cleveland and Pittsburgh was fun. I love to see Jameis Winston succeed. Denver's a better team right now. I love Stefanski, but what Sean Payton's doing and what Bo Nix are doing, I think we'll be talking about that next week on the show, how that Bo Nix market continues to tick upward.
I think that's what we're watching tonight.
And exactly. And I think that's really why you're tuning in, whether it be for fantasy purposes, betting purposes.
Right now, the Broncos are a playoff team.
Without question. And they're sitting there in that 7th seed. Really quick, 30 seconds. I know this is a hard pivot, but if we could do it for college football, we could do it for Major League Baseball. Blake Snell coming to the Dodgers, 5 years, $182 million.
Unbelievable.
$52 million on the signing bonus, the 2-time Cy Young winner. Guys, the rich keep getting richer.
How do they keep reloading?
That's what I'm saying.
It's unbelievable.
Where's it coming from?
The deal that he signed, other teams could have afforded that.
Yes.
In fact, it's rumored that there were other teams that actually came in with more money, and Snell said, no, I'm staying in California.
Yep, and it shows that the Dodgers have the money to spend, but they also have the appeal. They're in the right location, the number 2 market as far as size, and as of right now, as much as we hate to admit it, the best club in baseball. So, again, we could go on and on. It's sometimes you wish the show was
and one
2
thing
to 3
you should
hours,
mention,
but
they're a favorite for Roki Sasaki.
And that too. And that pitch, and we know how good that pitching staff is. A lot of people are wondering if Ohtani will even need to pitch as much as he wants to next year. There's going to be a lot to talk about in the offseason Major League Baseball.
Dodgers are setting themselves up for a 6-man rotation.
100%. 100%. And if there was one thing that they had a question mark this season, it was just that, right? They had the bullpen, maybe didn't have the starters. In the World Series, it certainly wasn't an issue. But again, now they're trying to eliminate all doubt altogether. There's going to be plenty more to track. Juan Soto still is going to need a home. That's going to be the biggest story in baseball.
Buehler?
Walker Buehler, who was a stud in the World Series after people thought, he was at least in the playoffs. His career was kind of at a standstill. So there's so much to talk about with the Dodgers, Yankees, and the Mets and the big market teams alone, let alone the rest of the show. So we'll keep track on that. Again, a lot of NBA action as we get closer to Christmas. And now that we're on the other side of Thanksgiving, the college football and the NFL action is going to all come to a head. So be sure to come here. Go Live Vegas, Monday mornings, 10 Pacific time, here for the Game Day Huddle, where we will break it all down for you. But until next time, for Jimmy, Steve, Brett, we thank you all so much for tuning in. You guys have a great rest of your week.
See ya.